Stocks in China plunging, raising fears about the stability of the world's second largest economy. The 7% sell-off was so severe it triggered a suspension in trading there, and that turmoil spread to Wall Street. You've likely seen the numbers already today. The Dow trading lower at one time by more than 440 points. It's come back a little bit, as you can see now, but still down more than 300. So what's driving the market turmoil in China? What does it mean for America? Gordon Chang is the author of the book, The Coming Collapse of China. He's an analyst and expert in this region of the world. So, Gordon, we all woke up to these headlines. What's going on in China today?
Well, there are a couple things. First of all, there's pessimism about the Chinese economy. Also, there's a fear that there is going to be a large dumping of stocks by institutions next week when a lockup period expires. This is a period where institutions were legally required to hold shares if they didn't want to, and that period expires on Monday. So there's a number of things occurring right now which really point to a much lower market.
And what does it tell us about the economy in China, and what does that mean for us here at home?
Yeah, the Chinese economy is not growing at the 6.9% that Beijing claims. I think it's more like 1 or 2%. But the big story is not where it's growing today. It's that the Chinese government has lost the ability to stop the downward fall. They can slow the descent a little bit by these tactics, but they can't change the downward direction.
It's interesting. It looks like there's parallel conversations here at home, because here we have the Fed raising rates a little bit, a big question about what our government could do if we see another decline in stocks or perhaps the economy. What's your sense of it, Gordon? You've looked at the Chinese economy for years now. From what you're seeing as we kick off this new year, what has you most concerned?
I think the biggest concern is the money coming out of the country. In the third calendar quarter, there was $460.6 billion of net capital outflow. The Chinese government was able to modify that a little bit in October and November, but only by informally imposing all sorts of capital controls. In other words, going back on reform. And that's unsustainable, because the Chinese people and businesses are going to find new ways to take money out of the country. And that means we're going to see money coming out, especially this year, when the Chinese economy is in real trouble.
Is that good news for us? Is that money coming to the United States?
Well, it's coming to the United States all over, in places like New York, but also places like Detroit, which the Chinese think is a real bargain. And so, you know, that's good news. But on the other hand, it drives up our dollar, which makes our exports uncompetitive. And also, you know, when you have problems in China, they reflect and they reverberate outwards. And so today what we saw is problems. But, you know, in August and September, we lost $2.5 trillion of value when there were problems in China, and those rippled through the world.
That's interesting to think about. Also interesting to think about the investments. We know the effect of Chinese investors in real estate markets like New York, and it has a real impact when it prices out some other domestic buyers. Let me ask you about this other kind of side part of this conversation. We did a series of segments over the last few weeks about what are the hottest areas of the world that we should be paying attention to. And one particular survey moved away from China a little bit and said, you know, this conflict in the South China Sea is not going to be as big as what we see in, you know, Russia and Syria and the Middle East. And I'm curious what you think about that in light of what's happening with the economy with China. What do you think as far as the foreign policy angle and what it means for us?
You know, Beijing has been pushing out in all directions. And so it's not only just the South China Sea, but it's also India, South Korea, and especially Japan, where they sent armed ships into Japanese territorial waters about a week and a half ago. The real problem is the Communist Party is losing legitimacy because of the problems, economic problems at home. And that means it's raising the flag of nationalism even higher. That puts our friends at risk, also puts the United States at risk, because they directly challenge, for instance, the U.S. Navy in the waters around China. So we do have a lot to be concerned about what happens in China. It certainly reverberates outward.
It's not just about the money. There's other effects as well.
Absolutely.
Gordon, great to have you on the program as always. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jenna.
Look forward to having you back.